Oh, this is a global social problem. And you can think of it in terms of an epidemic. You know, if we have an epidemic like HIV, we're going to bring to bear all the scientific research and analysis and epidemiology and demography that we can to find answers to it. Well, we've got to do the same thing with modern forms of slavery and human trafficking. We don't understand it terribly well. We understand that it's a horrific crime against human beings. It's a horrific human rights violation. But in terms of understanding how it fits in the global economy, how many people are being trafficked or enslaved in different places, why, and how do we best prevent it, we don't have answers to those questions, only guesses at the present moment. There are so many of those. I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a piece of research that was reported at this conference in which questions about human trafficking were tacked onto a national sample of health and medicine in the Ukraine. Now, the cost was almost nothing because someone else paid for the health survey. But these questions on a national sample survey allowed the very first clear statistical estimates of the number of people trafficked out of a country. Now, until now, there's been no way to build that estimate, and for the first time, and I have to say they were shocked in the Ukraine, and they were shocked, the people who did the research, because it turned out the numbers were much larger than any that had been indicated by, say, arrest records or rescue records. So that kind of work has to be extended really to the entire planet if we're going to understand the global flow of people. And then there's just so many things that have to do with things like the demand that men have to buy sex. So there's a lot of people saying, oh, it's a terrible thing, we've got to stop the demand. Well, how do you stop the demand? I mean, how do you understand how people buy sex or how men buy sex, and how do you understand about what would be the price point at which they could no longer buy sex? And, you know, there's a lot of fundamental economic demand equation estimations that have never been done, in part because we can't quite get the right kind of information back from the field. Well, there's an enormous amount of qualitative research needed to be done within the social sciences, and not least because, I've been focusing for a second on the numbers. It's because the numbers are so rare, but it's also true that just the whole issue is rarely studied, and because it's a hidden crime, and because it's a lived experience, and because it's often bound in culture, ethnicity, economic contexts, the right way to initiate research in that situation is going to be qualitative research that will allow us to build the parameters around which, if it's possible, quantitative research can be continued. Well, I think the most important thing is that while this is a horrific and in some senses sensational crime, we've got to back up from that sense of sensation and horror. Not lose it, but back up from it and try to think as clearly and sharply and persistently, methodically, and really bring discipline to this work. It's right that it's outrageous, but we can't operate from outrage. We must operate from analysis. Well, students are going to be leading us clearly. I mean, there's only a tiny handful of people who work on this issue full time at the present moment. It's growing, but it's growing from the student base. It's not that people are suddenly having university professors are having conversions and saying, well, I used to be an economist who does one kind of work, now I'm suddenly going to switch over. There's a tiny bit of that, but we're growing the activists, the scholars, and the scholar activists right now out of the student base. And so the exciting thing is that for a student to do really almost anything in this line, whether it's just talk to other people, or organize a pizza party, or go talk on the radio, or do some research, or read books, or watch some videos, or work on the Facebook page for an anti-slavery group. Anything like that helps to build their knowledge base that will lead them to the point that they will be a major player in the future.